Japan is one of the countries that must regularly face nature's fury. They have built many walls to defend against these disasters, yet many of those structures have still been overtopped or destroyed by tsunamis. But instead of giving up, they continued building an even larger system. Along Japan's northeastern coast stands a system of concrete walls stretching nearly 400 kilometers. In some places, it is as tall as a 4-story building and completely blocks the ocean from the homes behind it. The total cost of this system has exceeded $12 billion. But the most shocking thing is that waves can still overtop it. And if people believe the wall will protect them completely, that very sense of safety could cause them to react too late. So why does Japan continue building one of the largest coastal defense systems ever constructed? The answer begins at 2:46 p.m. on March 11, 2011. Off the coast of Tohoku, the seafloor shook in the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan's history. The quake measured magnitude 9.0 and lasted long enough for many people to realize that this was no ordinary earthquake. In coastal cities, warning sirens began to sound. People left behind their homes, cars, and shops and ran toward higher ground. But many still could not imagine what was approaching from offshore. While still in deep water, a tsunami may look little different from a slight change in the sea's surface. Only when it enters shallow water is all of its energy forced upward. The sea began to recede abnormally. Then a wall of black water appeared on the horizon. It carried boats, cars, timber, mud, and everything else that had been swept from the coast. In many places, the water surged several kilometers inland. In one area of Iwate Prefecture, traces showed that the water climbed a mountainside to more than 40 meters above sea level. Nearly 18,000 people were killed or went missing in the disaster. Towns that had existed for generations were erased from the map in just a few dozen minutes. This was not the first time Japan had faced a tsunami. Before 2011, many communities already had breakwaters, seawalls, floodgates, warning systems, and evacuation routes. But that day revealed a frightening truth. The town of Taro had once been famous for its double-layer seawall system, which stood about 10 meters high. Residents called it the Great Wall and believed the town had learned from past disasters. But the wave in 2011 was higher than the system could withstand. The water overtopped the wall, rushed in behind it, and devastated the residential area. Taro became one of the most painful symbols of the limits of defensive structures. But not far away, a completely different story unfolded. The village of Fudai had a floodgate and seawall about 15 meters high. Many people had once mocked the structure for being too large, too expensive, and unnecessary. The man who insisted on building it was former Mayor Kotaku Wamura. He had witnessed the aftermath of earlier tsunamis and believed that one day, a gigantic wave would return. When the 2011 tsunami struck, central Fudai was protected, and no deaths were recorded in the sheltered residential area. Two communities stood along the same coast. Both had protective walls, but one was destroyed while the other survived. Japan understood that it could not simply copy one design and place it along the entire coastline. After the disaster, the country began an enormous reconstruction program. Nearly 400 kilometers of seawalls were newly built or upgraded, at a total cost of about 1.35 trillion yen, equivalent to more than $12 billion at the time. But this is not one continuous wall stretching like the Great Wall of China. It consists of hundreds of separate defensive sections placed in front of towns, fishing ports, fields, river mouths, and industrial zones. The height varies from one area to another. In some places, the wall is only a few meters high. In others, it rises more than 12 meters and extends all the way around both sides of a bay. Seen from above, the gray sections of concrete form a new boundary between Japan and the Pacific Ocean. but the structure is only one part of a much larger plan. Many residential communities were moved to higher ground. Some towns raised the entire ground level by several meters before rebuilding homes. New roads, artificial hills, evacuation towers, and emergency stairways were added behind the wall. The goal is to create multiple layers of protection so that if one layer fails, people still have a chance to survive. In principle, seawalls perform three important functions. They can stop smaller waves, they can reduce the speed and energy of larger waves, and most importantly, they can buy more time for evacuation. Just a few minutes can determine whether a family reaches the hill or becomes trapped on the way. That is why Japan continues to build, even though no one can promise that these structures will always prevail. But as the walls began to appear, another debate also began. For people living far inland, a high wall may look like safety. For people whose lives depend on the sea, it may feel like a boundary cutting them off from their own way of life. In some communities, residents can no longer see the ocean from their homes, streets, or shops. A fisherman in Rikuzentakata once described living behind the wall as feeling like being imprisoned despite having done nothing wrong. This is not only a matter of scenery. Fishermen need to observe the weather and the sea. Tourist towns need the coastline to attract visitors. Villages that once developed around fishing ports must now learn to live behind a gigantic block of concrete. Some people believe this is the necessary price after what happened. In some places, the structure protects homes and important infrastructure. In others, what lies behind it is mainly farmland, empty lots, or areas where homes are no longer allowed to be built. So the question is, what is it protecting? How much does it cost? And what must the community sacrifice? The process of deciding the wall's height has also been controversial. After a horrific disaster, it is very difficult for a local leader to propose building a lower wall. If the next wave comes, no one wants to be asked why they chose to save money at the wrong time. But building the highest possible wall is not always the best solution. The higher the wall, the greater the cost, and the more the connection between the town and the sea is severed. It also creates a danger that is difficult to see. When people believe the structure is strong enough, they may hesitate after an evacuation order is issued. The lesson of 2011 showed that hesitation is extremely dangerous. A tsunami does not always arrive according to the initial forecast. The first wave is not necessarily the largest. A wall can delay the water, but it cannot make the decision to run to higher ground for people. That is why the stairs, signs, and evacuation routes behind the wall are just as important as the concrete structure itself. In many places, the top of the wall has been turned into a walking or cycling path. A structure, once seen only as a symbol of disaster, is gradually becoming part of everyday life. But beneath that normality, one question always remains. What would happen if a tsunami larger than the design limit appeared again? The honest answer is that the water could overtop it. In that case, the wall becomes an obstacle that slows the flow and reduces some of its energy before the water moves deeper inland. Its actual effectiveness will depend on the height of the wave, the terrain, and whether the area behind the wall has been prepared to drain the water. This is also why Japan does not place all of its hope in a single structure. The more important philosophy is to accept that some natural disasters cannot be stopped by humans, and that the goal is to reduce their impact as much as possible. The wall still has value if it slows the water, but it becomes meaningless if people cannot evacuate in time. The more massive the concrete structure becomes, the more people must remember that they cannot depend on it completely. The story of Fudai is often used to show that a sufficiently large wall can save an entire community. The story of Taro reminds us that no wall can guarantee safety in every situation. Both stories are true. And that contrast is what makes Japan's coastal defense project more compelling than an ordinary construction project. It is not only a story about concrete, it is a story about memory, fear, and how a country tries to live beside a threat it cannot eliminate. For families who lost loved ones, the wall is a promise that the old tragedy will not be repeated. For fishermen, it is a barrier that prevents them from seeing the sea. For engineers, authorities, and younger generations, it is both a limited layer of protection and a new part of the landscape. But the ocean on the other side of the wall remains unchanged. Japan lies in one of the most seismically active regions in the world. Another major earthquake and another tsunami would be nothing new. Therefore, preparation must continue even after the wall is completed. Warning systems, floodgates, and evacuation routes must always be ready so that people can reach safety under any conditions. The memory of 2011 must be passed on to those who never witnessed it. Because the most dangerous structure is one that makes people believe they no longer need to be afraid. So, is Japan's nearly 400-kilometer seawall system worth more than $12 billion? Each town will have a different answer. In densely populated places, the wall can buy precious additional time. But in places where residents have already moved to higher ground, its value remains controversial. That is the nature of every disaster prevention project. Japan is one of the countries that must regularly face earthquakes, tsunamis, and storms, yet it has still risen to become one of the world's leading economies. That strength does not come from nature treating Japan kindly, but from the way the country rises after every disaster and prepares better for the next one. This wall cannot defeat the ocean, but it can slow the wave and buy precious extra minutes for people to reach safety. And sometimes, those few minutes are enough to decide whether a town continues to exist or survives only in memory. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring fascinating stories you may not have known. Thanks for watching.